It is my pleasure to greet you all on this cloudy Friday morning. I am Anubhav Banerjee, a student of the 26th MAIS program, and I will be honored to serve as your moderator for this discussion on the Sustainable Development Goals on Zero Hunger. These goals were signed in 2015, and it's almost halfway. We're almost at the halfway point when it comes to examining the plausibility of these goals being fulfilled. And I think this is as good a stage as any to examine the plausibility and the steps we've taken towards fulfilling these goals. And as a global citizen and a student and often a confused human being, I find it quite useful to examine perspectives through a discussion. And I believe this is the opportunity that we get to examine both the perspectives of contemporaries of the younger generations, as well as career professionals within the field. And I come before you today to introduce our speakers and give a general overview of the way we will have this discussion. And I would first like to welcome our first speaker today, Dr. Anja Appel, the director of the Coordination Office of the Episcopal Conference of Austria. A political scientist and having held this position since 2018, she represents the KOO network within the Coopération Internationale pour le Développement et la Solidarité, an umbrella organization that works for Catholic development agencies from Europe and North Africa. It is my honor to welcome you here today, ma'am.
Good morning. Thank you.
And it is also my privilege to introduce, with a touch of familiarity, Ambassador Emil Brix, serving as our director and in key leadership in educational professions for a very long time. Director Brix has had a career service within the Austrian diplomatic service, having served as an ambassador to multiple states, including as the Austrian General Counsel in Krakow, as well as the ambassador to the United Kingdom and to the Russian Federation. It is my honor to once again welcome you back, Director Brix.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
It is my pleasure. Now that we have briefly been introduced to our speakers, I will very quickly iterate the rules of procedure, which are functionally similar to the discussion we had before. We will have the individual presentations of both of our panel speakers, and then we will open the floor to questions after about 7 to 8 minutes of each of the speakers having finished their points. And I would request all of you to refer to the chat to understand which ID you have to send the messages to. And we will attempt to answer as many questions as we can within the constraints of time, of course. And without any further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Appel to begin today's discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Dear Mr. Ambassador Brix, dear participants, I would like to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at this year's Diplomatic Academy Conference. The organizers are honored that we are able to dedicate ourselves to the topic of zero hunger on this panel, because in doing so, they are focusing on a goal that is a reminder of a fundamental failure of human existence, that every human being has a right to life and to adequate nutrition, and that the failure to realize precisely this represents a social failure on the part of humanity. In addition to combating hunger, Goal 2 also includes the implementation of sustainable and resilient food production. Furthermore, according to the guiding principle, leave no one behind, the promotion of sustainable agricultural productivity in countries of the Global South and their equality on the international agricultural market are particularly emphasized. SDG 2 thus links social, economic, and ecological aspects of responsible consumption with resilient food production at national and global level. The reality, however, is grim. According to the current data, 2.3 billion people, almost a third of world's population, did not have access to sufficient healthy food in the pandemic year 2020. This means an increase compared to the previous years. From the outset, it was clear to those of us who work as internationally active organizations that the pandemic would exacerbate existing crises, worsen social imbalances, and widen the gaps between periphery and centers, especially on the issues of governance power. And since the extent of hunger in the world is influenced by many indicators, I would now like to go into these, of which I believe that we both as Austrian and European society have a very urgent need for action, which, if I may say so, partly exceeds the very honorable approaches of the federal government. I would therefore like to put forward 3 theses that are intended to stimulate exchange and are therefore deliberately formulated in a maybe provocative but serious manner. Thesis 1. We heard it already from the Ministry for Climate Change. Only climate protection, preservation of biodiversity, and democratization of the food market can guarantee a reduction of global hunger. The international food system is at a crossroads because its crisis is a result of many crises: global warming, loss of biodiversity, erosion or destruction of fertile soils, including through sealing, pollution of water and soil, marginalization of farmers, cultural discrimination, displacement of older varieties, and the global investments in fertile lands. All these processes are increasingly making ecologically sensitive and culturally adequate production and fair food supply impossible. In order to make food supply realistic worldwide, we must simultaneously address these major interrelationships in a more ambitious way globally than has been the case so far. Thesis 2. Without a shift to a largely vegetarian diet, there will be no zero hunger. The food production sector is a key driver of climate change. The livestock sector, in particular, is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. The increasing global demand for meat in some regions leads to brutal deforestation processes in others, such as Amazonia, for the purpose of soil cultivation and cattle grazing. On the one hand, this is associated with dramatic losses of biodiversity, the destruction of human habitat, namely that of the indigenous peoples, and last but not least, another domino that is tipping over, making the process of global warming irreversible and exacerbating it. Only a vegetarian diet can change this, or an almost vegetarian diet. Thesis 3. We produce ourselves to death, or in other words, our overconsumption costs lives. Our lifestyle and the associated hunger for resources of all kinds has for too long necessitated the promotion of industrial agriculture or agriculture geared to increasing surface area or numbers of farm animals in the area of agricultural policy. In fact, 80% of the EU agriculture budget is spent on industrialized agriculture. It is a matter of mass, both regionally and globally. We must therefore promote the approach of agroecology worldwide, which sees agricultural production on a small scale, closed resource cycles, preserves biodiversity, supports adaptation to climate change, and puts the needs of small food producers before the interests of agricultural and food technology, enables their co-determination. So I'm finished, and I thank for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Appel. If I may be as cheeky as I can be, I guess each of these 3 theses is kind of a food for thought, because all of them have multiple avenues for examination and discussion. With that being said, I would like to now invite warmly Ambassador Brix to deliver his presentation, and I would request all audience members to be ready with their questions and present them at the end of Director Brix's arguments. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind invitation, and welcome to everybody, and also to Ms. Appel. I don't have 3 provocative theses, but still I think what I have to say should be provocative, because when I look on the issue, First of all, I'm very happy that zero hunger is already number 2 on the list of SDGs. That was a good decision in 2015. My second point is it was also a good decision that the World Food Programme was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020, which shows again that there is a sort of acceptance of the urgency of the issue, and they give good reasons for it. My third positive point is already a bit cynical. I looked up the status report of the Republic of Austria on how we have realized the aim of the SDG Zero Hunger. And it says there that we have realized it 100% in Austria. It only says that we have a problem with obesity, and this problem which is going up and down, maybe it's more going up. And there, I don't want to sound cynical, but I don't think that Austria has achieved the zero hunger aim in the SDG 2. It has achieved it within Austria, but we have a responsibility also to take care that this objective of zero hunger is a common good, a common global good. And it does not help if individual member states simply are happy to announce that for them, they have achieved one of those issues. That's why I'm saying that I'm feeling that this sort of national statistics and status reports are sometimes not very helpful in achieving this objective of keeping it on the record as a common good that we have to work on. Having said this, I would like to add on the question of what are the drivers of the problems of hunger in the world? And it's getting more and more clear, and I think also the political decision makers, it's getting clear that the main driver is really the lack of peace in given situations globally. So conflict, wars is certainly one of the main drivers, and it has already been mentioned this morning that the Ukraine crisis and the consequences of the Ukraine crisis, and I'm not talking about refugee situations in and around Ukraine and possible hunger situations there, but on the direct consequences of energy prices, on the availability of resources worldwide and so on is very obvious. So you have this very clear idea that that the main driver is really conflict, and this has two sides. One side is that hunger is a consequence of conflicts, and the other side, hunger is used as a weapon in conflicts, as a weapon of war, and I think it needs. Starting from this objective of zero hunger, to look also a bit more than we do nowadays into the issue how hunger is used in warlike situations. And the main examples for this are conflicts in Africa in the last few years, and still existing issues of war. I think talking about, therefore talking about zero hunger is also talking about how we can make sure that in conflict zones, this issue is not able to use this issue. For this, there is no recipe, but for this I would say, if we make it as public as possible, what's going on there is already something very important. Secondly, what we already have is that the United Nations system is condemning these sort of activities. This normative side is also important, but it's on the ground. Unfortunately, it's not often very helpful. And the third major element is really, as in all issues of zero hunger, you need change in the agricultural system. You need an educational effort in the region. You need overall educational effort to make sure that in a given society, there is less chance for inner conflicts than there is at the moment. So the relationship, once more, between the issue of zero hunger and the issue of international conflicts on all continents is obvious and has to be tackled first. Secondly, the issue of climate change. Again, there it is also very clear that climate change has already increased the necessity to work on abolishing hunger in the world. I'm not sure whether the figures that show the numbers of those who are under the condition of this challenge, it has grown because of ongoing climate change, but or also on behalf of because of COVID-19, I guess it's both. And what we see from the attempt to work on the political level against this, my impression is that this sort of balancing act between our interest to deal with consequences of COVID in the developed world and the developing world is aggravating the problem. You see it from the vaccination story, you see it from the production of medication, you see it from the cutting of supply lines. It's aggravating the difference between the developed and the developing world. This is a very general sketch of the situation. So there is a lot to do to work against this. But let me also mention something which is not often mentioned in this context. There is an elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is population growth, continuous population growth. I do understand that in studies on how to reach the zero hunger objective, one doesn't speak so much about population growth as one of the reasons for the problems that we have, but we should be realistic. It is true. I fully agree. What I read in all the papers on this is that there is enough food around the globe to feed everyone. It's simply a question of how to distribute it to the right places, and it's possibly even a question of how productive our agriculture is and how sustainable our agriculture is. Yes, but still we should include also the discussion on is population growth globally sustainable? We have to deal with a population growth which is tremendous, and we are working in favor of it because we try to solve the problems of undernourishment, because we work for better medical systems. So we have a strong interest to achieve all this, but are we aware enough of the consequences with which we do not deal enough? The issue of distribution of food, the issue of sustainability, the issue of how we make resilient food production, and so on. So I think it's very obvious. It's not enough to declare the objective like in 2015. It's nice, but not enough to give the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020 to the World Food Programme. And it's certainly not enough if individual countries declare that they have no problem with achieving the zero or hunger objective. We have to concentrate on and that's more than a thesis, the fact actually that the chief driver of hunger is conflict. And the discussion we can maybe mention the individual areas where it's most obvious, but I think they are known to all of us. And I would be interested to discuss whether people can accept my assessment that it's mainly conflict which is now driving this, and it's not so much the question of are we fast enough in changing food production? Are we fast enough in getting more sustainable? Everything we heard about regional and seasonal products. It's more about international relations and how we have somehow not enough taken into account how these conflicts have an effect also on the situation of hunger. And even countries, and I looked into this, and these are my last words here now, I looked into this, what about China? What is the role of China in this context? And I found that China is also saying that they are almost have almost achieved the zero hunger objective. But when you look a bit more into detail into these statistics, you find that you still have areas where it's a real problem, and you still have also the issue of that in big countries like China, but also it's a similar issue in India. It's not so far away also from the United States, that the connection between the way you organize your agriculture and the effects it has on hunger and on nutrition, and I include here also malnutrition, is not so obvious as it has to be. So for me, the glass is not yet half full on these issues. And as I see it, the general awareness in international organization is very high, but in the individual countries, there is still much more concentration on the local situation, on this idea of seasonal regional good, and we heard it from the Austrian ministers, then possibly is good for the overall situation. That because to me the most important thing is that we have to see it as a common global good. And this sounds very easy, but I tried to explain a little bit why in the unstable political system that we have globally, it is not as easy as we may think. And again, I'm here at the Ukraine conflict as one of the examples where you have direct and indirect consequences also for our objective achieving zero hunger. Thank you. I'm open for the discussion. Looking forward.
Thank you, Director Brix. It's an interesting way of looking at sort of the goals of such international conventions as not just checklists to fulfill, but dynamic objectives that need to look into various extenuating circumstances. With that being said, I will now open the floor for questions, and it's a reminder we will try and accommodate questions in the order that they have been sent, and I will commence with a question from Ms. Chelsea, if she may unmute and ask the question.
Thank you very much. My question is to Dr. Appel, and it would be coming back to your theses. What specific mechanisms are being implemented to move people from a meat-based to a plant-based diet? And how successful are these mechanisms in tackling cultural norms and traditions surrounding meat consumption?
Thank you for the question. If I understood it right, you are right. You are asking me what are the techniques behind this thesis?
Correct.
Well, yeah, you just pointed them out yourself. It's a question of culture and norms. And it's, as we heard before from the Ministry of Climate, Leonore Gewessler, to value the food we have is one of the key issues there, but also to see the real prices behind this food. If you have a piece of meat or a piece of fruit on your plate, you see the price you paid in the market where you got it, or from the wherever you got it. But is this a real price? I would say it's not. Because when we get, for example, fruit from other countries, we just don't import just the fruit. We import water, we import vitamins, we import soil by having produced it on another in another country. So the price we pay here is never the real price. The price is paid by others. The ones which work on the farms, on the big farms, most of them, as we see it in a region in Spain, for example, are migrants in irregular working conditions, not respecting human rights. Or you see it in other areas where the soil is destroyed by industrialized agriculture. So the consequences of this kind of producing food are not in the price we pay. As soon as we get realistic prices, the consumption, for example, of meat will very fast go down. And another thing is, if you look at which is also part of our culture, we don't look at the real facts. No? There are a lot of documentations on TV. You can see where you see how animals are raised here and how our meat is done at the end. And if we all would have seen this documentation, we would from ourselves stop eating it or reducing it, because it's not, it's creation, huh? And we don't respect creation. We just handle it like a thing, a piece of textile or whatever. And while you're right, it's a hard way to go. But the other processes around, like climate change and the loss of biodiversity, they will force us to do it quicker. I cannot, I'm sorry, I have not 5 pieces of technique I can just present, because it's a really more philosophical question. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Appel. I think the next question comes from Katharina Corner, if she may unmute and ask the question.
Yes, hi. This question also goes to Dr. Appel concerning the Laudato Si platform of the Catholic Church, which wants to create a coalition of sustainability for climate protection. I was wondering how this platform can contribute to the SDG Zero Hunger, and in what way?
The platform itself has a goal to make the community behind Laudato Si visible, and to enrich the coalition, so to say. There we know that all over the world there are a lot of people, individuals, also communities, schools, whatever, are living in the sense of Laudato Si, and to share the experience and to make this huge community visible and feasible, strengthen the approach. And how can it work against in favor of zero hunger or against hunger? Well, this platform can open room and space for exchange and to share experience, life experience, and to make sensitive for the realities others in the world are living in. So I guess if you know already from the Laudato Si platform, you also know that we have a synodal process within the Catholic Church, which is also has the objective to listen to the other and to hear the voices from the periphery. And I guess this is, it's a little bit also perhaps a piece to the first question. If I know that others are suffering, I easily can change my more easily change my day-to-day procedures and styles of diet and whatever, because we are connected and interconnected. And as far as we don't know about these realities, we can just say, well, my life is okay. We are in Austria, we are fine. Yeah, we are not. We are just one small piece. As individuals, we are just one small piece in creation, and as country, we are just one small piece in world society.
Thank you again, Dr. Appel. I think the next question in front of me is from Johanna Hattinger. She may unmute and ask the question.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. And I wanted to ask Ms. Appel as well, concerning your second statement. In your opinion, which measures could states like, for example, Austria take to reduce the consumption or the demand for meat and animal products?
Okay, I'm not sure if it's similar to the first one.
Yeah, a bit, but like like what kind of policies might be introduced, for example?
Okay. Well, once what I said to put the real price on the products, especially on meat. And what you also can change is the kind of the kind of processing it, so that it if you change the processes of producing, I don't know the English words for it, sorry, meat, you also have influence on the culture behind it. Every one of us knows, if you know people, farmers personally, who is raising, for example, meat animals, sorry, for example, sheep or whatever, and you buy a piece of meat there, you have another relationship to it. So the local producing and local consumption is keen to this change of value of meat. But this is only manageable for those who are close to farmers, that's clear. And another issue is that you have consequences in the what you said, the minister said at the beginning, one of the big parts in this agricultural emissions is the transport. It also makes a difference where it comes from and where it goes. Austria exports pork meat to China in a very high amount, and this pork is fed with soy, also from Brazil. And it says, well, it doesn't make sense to produce the food for the meat, for the animals in Brazil, destroy forest, and then raise it here and then sell it to China. And if you show this to people, and if you make clear that that this all what is behind is within the product, is shown within the price, it will dramatically rise. I mean, I repeat my argument, but I don't know. Most of the things we do are regulated by price or by sensitivity. So you can change it changing the price or make the people aware of the dramas behind it. Sorry to say.
Yes, Dr. Appel, I guess like the veganism aspect does continually create some kind of interesting conflicts in discussion. I'm so sorry, Director Brix, I cut you off.
If I just may respond, because Ms. Appel was twice talking about the market mechanism. I wonder whether it's really market mechanisms which can solve these issues of the real price on the product and so on. I would say it needs intervention, government intervention also, to create an environment which makes real prices possible. So I would not only rely on classical market mechanisms only. So it needs intervention, but I understand you would share my opinion.
Yes, I share it, but the questions were concrete to the consumption of meat. So I have to take here. If you ask me about regulation of the market, I can add other things because the market is not fair. The global market on food is not fair.
Yes.
As far as rich countries can invest in fertile lands and buy land, and the farmers, local farmers cannot approach their land, it's unequal. They don't have a chance at all. So that's what I talked about earlier about democratization, the regulation system. You are very right with your point.
All right, and there's one last question, very succinctly by Bernadetta, and in the interest of time, I should read it out towards Director Brix, which asks, what is the role of the economic relationship and trade between developed and developing countries towards reaching the goal of zero hunger? And would you paint it in a more positive or a more negative sense?
Well, one of our problems is that in the trade relations that we have on the global scale, we don't really trade in normally these issues of zero hunger at all. For a long time in our trade relations and trade deals, we didn't even trade in issues of developing and developed countries. It was just a mercantile power situation, who could get what out of a trade deal. We tried, as we all know, with the international WTO system and also in the European Union to a certain extent, to put into the equation also issues of helping developing countries, but also issues of as was mentioned, of ecology and environmental issues. And there I'm quite positive. I'm positive that this development will continue, that we put into our trade issues more and more of these SDGs where they apply. Where I'm pessimistic is that we will get less trade deals. That we can see already now. So there are hardly any new ones. And then it's sort of a balance. Is it good to have more trade deals which are not do not include as many things as we would like, or is it better to have the best trade deals which are available? So there we are at the moment. I'm quite afraid that, for instance, the United Kingdom, when they are doing trade deals now with Global Britain is the word they're using, with the rest of the world, I don't see that they really put into these trade deals on a priority list the realization of the SDGs. That's my very concrete example that by leaving the European Union, the trade deals that the UK is doing are less ambitious in this field than they used to be.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think with that, I must regretfully draw this session to a close because we've had four very exhaustive responses to four very different questions. And I think at this juncture, I would like to remind all the attendees that after this session, we will be bifurcating into two different rooms, and the panel for the food security shall be within the same Zoom meeting as you are in presently. And in the other room, there will be the discussion on the digitalization and technology in food production. With that being said, I would like to thank both of our panelists for taking time out of their days and providing us an insight into what career professionals in these fields have to say about problems facing sustainable development goals regarding world hunger. I thank the panelists again for their responses and their interaction with this panel, with the students. And with that, I would like to draw this to a close, and I welcome the rest of you for the other sessions at DASICON 2022. Thank you.